We're going to move on to our next session, where we'll be exploring how Toronto Region can strengthen its talent pipelines, which means learning more about how we better support youth and new immigrants in our labor market. No matter how much we upskill our current workforce, it really is the youth of today, together with new Canadians who arrive here, who will lead our industry of tomorrow. So we have to ensure they receive the support needed to excel across all sectors, and that means investing in better, more integrated education and training. There's no better person to pass the microphone over to than Merrick Gertler, President of University of Toronto, who'll elaborate on how post-secondary institutions are showing leadership in the world of workforce development. U of T is such a strong partner of ours with the Board of Trade. We're happy Merrick could join us here today. And I have to declare a conflict. My son is at school at U of T, so he's kind of my son's boss. Anyway, Merrick, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Jan, and all reports are very positive about your son. As others have said, it is so great to be back in person. We're all relearning the art of social interaction in person. So far, so good. Let me begin by thanking Minister McNaughton for sharing his insights and for highlighting critical aspects of our evolving workforce in Toronto and Ontario. Mr. McNaughton has been a great champion, not only for boosting the supply of skilled labor, but as you heard just now, for also improving work conditions and creating opportunities for many vulnerable and precarious workers and new Canadians. So I really thank him for his leadership. On any given day, there are between 600 and 800 skilled trades working on our 3 U of T campuses. Many of them are building major construction projects like our Schwartz Reisman Innovation Campus at the northeast corner of College and University, across the street from the Mars Discovery District, one of our closest innovation partners. Phase 1, which is slated to open in early 2023, so less than a year away, will provide 250,000 square feet of space to house and support homegrown, scaling firms, applying deep learning and neural networks to drive innovation, job creation, and economic development. And you might have seen a picture of Phase 1 under construction in the New York Times last week. It will also be the new home of the Vector Institute and the Schwartz Reisman Institute for Technology and Society, which brings together humanities, social sciences, and legal scholars to help us shape new technologies in socially useful ways. Phase 2, scheduled to begin construction in mid-2024, will add a further 400,000 square feet of space to accommodate local startups in life sciences and healthcare. So skilled trades are helping build the next generation of Toronto's innovation and entrepreneurship infrastructure, which in turn will power the burgeoning knowledge economy in Ontario and Canada. But universities like U of T and the others represented here today do much more than build buildings. We are also leading the way in educating the workforce of the future. And in doing so, we are creating the talent base that is attracting unprecedented levels of investment to the Toronto region. And that same talent is also fueling the local startup scene. And our innovation economy in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor has quietly become the talk of North America. As the New York Times reported last week, Toronto is now the third largest tech hub in North America, trailing only New York and Silicon Valley. Our region's tech workforce is growing at a faster pace than any hub on the continent. And in fact, we created more tech jobs between 2015 and 2020 than New York and Silicon Valley combined. The list of major companies locating or expanding in Toronto is striking and includes Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Shopify, Pinterest, Walmart, Klarna, Twitter, eBay, Grok, Cerebras, Recursion Pharmaceuticals, and more. Cade Metz, the author of the New York Times article, who a number of us met when he was in town here, notes that these anchor companies are drawn by our talent. And I'm quoting here, they come to Toronto for the researchers and engineers who are already here. Once here, these companies have a profound impact on the evolution of the regional economy, often in surprising and unexpected ways that defy the conventional wisdom. Cade Metz documents how these firms are actually deepening the base of talented workers and entrepreneurs in the region, creating a truly virtuous circle. He quotes Mike Volpe, a partner in VC firm Index Ventures, which is headquartered in San Francisco and London, and has recently invested in a Toronto-based AI startup. Volpe says, you need anchor companies that can provide transformative impact. Entrepreneurs come from these companies and start their own. And indeed, Metz cites two striking examples, both with roots at U of T. The first is Waabi, a self-driving technology company founded by U of T computer scientist Raquel Urtasun. Raquel was hired by Uber to run their self-driving car lab, which they set up in Toronto in 2016. When Uber decided to exit this business, Raquel started Waabi, employing much of her former team at Uber. It is now attracting major investments from VCs around the world. But it is a Canadian company firmly rooted in Toronto. Why Toronto? Well, as Raquel herself puts it, quote, the talent is here. Another example is Cohere, founded in Toronto by former members of Jeff Hinton's research group at U of T, who previously worked in Google's Toronto Research Lab. The natural language processing firm has raised nearly $200 million US from foreign VCs such as Index Ventures and local investors like Radical Ventures. Of course, this amazing influx of investment, this explosion of startup activity, puts huge pressure on the tech labor market, a point emphasized by speakers already today, also noted in Saturday's Globe and Mail. This point, of course, highlights the role of universities in producing talent and in leading the upskilling and retraining of existing workers. As many have noted, this task requires the close cooperation of educators and employers. Tristan Jung, a Toronto native and a Waterloo grad, who worked at Twitter's headquarters in San Francisco and then helped convince Twitter to establish an engineering hub in Toronto, told the New York Times, this is now a place to make a long-term bet, to build connections with the cluster of schools in the area and create a new pipeline for hiring. Well, as a former vice chair of Canada's Business Higher Education Roundtable, an organization that has championed such collaboration to promote work-integrated learning, I could not agree more. In the following panel, my colleague Chris Yip, Dean of U of T's Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering, will speak to the incredible partnerships that he's forging with local and global firms to strengthen the talent pipeline, including in the continuing education space. In addition, our Master of Science program in Applied Computing places students in 8-month internships that help local employers solve practical problems of strategic importance to their long-term success. 92% of these interns are recruited by their employers following their graduation. Indeed, firms consistently rave about the quality of the graduates from this program. And what's more, 90% of graduates remain in the GTA at least for 2 years, and the overwhelming majority choose to build their careers here over the long term. For international students recruited to this program, Canada's post-graduation work permit program, which provides an automatic 3-year work permit and facilitates permanent residency and citizenship, is a major attraction and a major reason why these international students stay in Canada for the long term. As we look to the role of higher education in the Toronto region in strengthening the talent pipeline, it is, of course, vital that we ensure access to our schools from the widest possible range of qualified students. Our universities and colleges are vital forces for social mobility for new Canadians and for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, fostering prosperity, social cohesion, and innovation by by promoting inclusive excellence. U of T alone enrolls some 95,000 students across our 3 campuses. More than half of our domestic undergraduates come from households of modest means, and racialized students comprise more than 2/3 of our enrollment. And women comprise 40% of our incoming class of engineering students, the highest in the country. We also, of course, attract many talented faculty and students from around the world to work and study here. So we play a key role in ensuring that Toronto's talent pipeline remains diverse and inclusive, and that the benefits of technology-led growth are widely shared. Perhaps you saw the announcement last week that U of T will be opening a new Academy of Medicine and Integrated Health at our Scarborough campus, and we have the principal and vice president of the campus, Wisdom Teddy, here today. This partnership among the Temerty Faculty of Medicine, the Bloomberg Faculty of Nursing, and local hospitals will leverage the exceptional talents of students in the Eastern GTA to meet the urgent need for physicians and other healthcare professionals in the area, and to grow the pipeline of life science graduates. Of course, excellence and inclusion are mutually reinforcing. Welcoming a diverse array of creative and talented people has been a vital part of successful regional clusters around the world, from London to Singapore to Silicon Valley. And we need to support both homegrown success stories and inbound investment from abroad to drive local prosperity. Just in the same way, we need to ramp up our production of well-educated graduates locally and increase immigration. Both and, not either or. Our high quality of life and the openness of our immigration system and our universities and colleges are the true sources of Toronto's competitive advantage. Thank you for your attention. Now I'd like to begin our 3rd panel session for the day, titled Strengthening the Talent Pipeline. So would you please join me in welcoming Giles Gerson as he introduces our moderator.
Thank you for, I'm going to say, that important speech, Merrick. I think it was, you had a lot of the change that's taking place at U of T as at campuses across Ontario is really monumental. And I think, we at the Board of Trade are in complete agreement about the importance of keeping Toronto as a technology powerhouse that you rightly identified, but also a livable and welcoming region. And much of our work has been concerned with housing supply, for example, and affordability, and the intrinsic link to attracting and retaining talent, particularly tech talent. If we're going to maintain our hard-won standing as a top-tier global tech hub and magnet for talent, as you mentioned, we're going to need to not only keep these insights in mind, but actually act on them, as you're saying that you're doing. And I think we've heard today there's a lot of intent to act across the region. Merrick's presentation segues neatly into our next panel discussion, strengthening the talent pipeline. The panel is actually very close to my heart. Before I recently joined the board, I was Ontario's Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and it can hardly be understated, something I saw every day, that our talent pipeline is actually well endowed or even overly endowed or even mired with red tape. And that's something the government has been addressing. For example, the newly established Skilled Trades Ontario that the minister mentioned, the new agency, has the mandate to strengthen and streamline apprenticeship programs and open the spigot to apprenticeship opportunities. And the minister also identified a big investment in apprenticeship programming, really, really important. All of this is critical, all the more so in a region where 33% of our employees are newcomers. We've been hearing the same story for years, and many of these newcomers find themselves locked out of their preferred professions for which they have the education, the training, the experience, because of unnecessary regulatory barriers. Mechanical engineers and physicists should not be driving Ubers. Everyone wins when immigrants to our region can use and make full use of their education and specialized skill sets. And of course, we need to guarantee that foreign degrees are commensurate with Canadian standards so that some degree of vetting is necessary, of course, but please, not endless, repetitive vetting. We make foreign trade professionals Foreign trained professionals jump through too many hoops to recertify themselves in Canada, and fast-tracking recertification for these professionals would not only unlock immigrant talent already residing in Canada, it would ensure that Canada remains an attractive destination for the world's brightest, highly skilled immigrants. The tragedy is that it's 2022, and I could have spoken these same words in 1990, and I probably did. Now, as with every session, we have a poll to get your thoughts on this issue, and for those joining us virtually, you can access the poll by clicking on the Q&A and polling tab on your screen. And for those of you here in person, instructions on how to answer the poll are on your table. I know you've done a few of these already, so you're probably reasonably well versed. The poll asks the question, what is your biggest challenge associated with our talent pipeline? I'll be sharing the results at the end of the session. I'd like to introduce the moderator of our next panel, Sudha Dwivedi, who will be guiding us through a discussion on talent pipelines. Sudha is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Teranet, has a long history of championing equitable workplaces. Please give Sudha a round of applause. Thank you.
Wow, tough acts to follow today. Really excited to be here like everybody else. My first live session in many, many months and in 2 years, so glad to be here. Look, I know we're getting into a bit of a after lunch lull, but let's get the energy up again, okay? So look, as you heard, I'm the leader of Teranet for their global HR team, and throughout my career, I'm really been passionate of a champion of D&I. I really believe in the role of psychological safety, that everybody should be their true selves and have that feeling of safety to bring their whole selves to work every single day. We can only do better if people can bring their voices, they have the seat at the table, and they're heard. Okay? So, throughout my career, I've run large-scale employee engagement programs that centered around development, and with that, always through the lens of continuous learning, which is why moderating this panel today is so exciting for me in that role of continuous learning. And, fun fact about me, I am the daughter of a professor. My dad taught mathematics and statistics for over 50 years before he passed away, so I'm very familiar with the role of academia in our world. In fact, I'm the only one in my family that went into business, and he said, you're doing what? You actually, after your MBA, you're going to do a PhD, right? I went, no. So anyways, look, we all know, we've heard throughout the day today that there is a shortage of talent. It's not just about the supply, it's also about the skills. And we can only get there if we can work together in this ecosystem of partnering as employers, educational institutions, and other employment service providers. And we're going to hear from all of those people today in our panel. The question for us is, how are we going to fix this shortage? It's not a one-person job. It's not a one-institution job. It's all of us. We heard today that these conversations have to happen early on, and that's true. It's actually before they even enter university. We need to have these workforce planning discussions at the high school and middle school level, because there are many paths to success and many paths to employment. And whether that's a trade school or whether that's university or college, there's all different ways to lead to success. So, there is no greater frustration for a graduate that at the end of their degree has dim employment prospects. They spent so many years learning and they don't have a job to go to. And we know that in this pandemic, the hospitality industry was hit the hardest, like many others, and many of those students or new workers to the workforce did not have the opportunity to work in hospitality. And what did they learn there, right? Customer service, time management, dealing with difficult people. I mean, if you can work with difficult people with humor, grace, and respect, come and see me. I have a job in HR for you, okay? So, look, as I said, this is a partnership. No good is going to come from the blame game. This is something we all have to work together for to advance our society. Every marginalized group in our world only gets better if we work shoulder to shoulder in a society to help those groups move forward. And hopefully this conversation today and this incredible day that we're having today will give us some of those opportunities and ideas to help us move forward. So, look, organizations from all sizes can contribute here. At Terranet, we have a very robust co-op program. We continuously hire from the University of Toronto, from my friends at Waterloo, from all over the GTA, but not all organizations can do that. And I'm here today to tell you that regardless of the size of your organization, you can give that one person a unique skill that they will learn and they can take forward in their careers. Anybody can do it, really. So, as an HR leader, and I'm sure many of you hear this in your jobs, in your organizations, new entrants to the workforce can't find the experience they want. Employers can't find the skills that they want, and they can't seem to get their foot into the door. So the status quo isn't working. We need to do something different, and we need to be better. I think our panel here today are going to have some of those ideas for us. So at this moment, I'd like to call them up to the stage. So our first panelist is Christopher Yip, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at the University of Toronto. Come on up. Yeah. Akusoa Alagratham, Executive Director at First Work, a leading advocacy organization that works with various stakeholders to advance solutions for youth employment. Come on up, Akusoa. Leslie Wu, CEO of Civic Action, a non-profit, non-partisan organization which addresses the social and economic challenges facing Toronto's future. And last but not least, Jack Kim, who's a partner at Fragerman Canada, a law firm which specializes in bringing skilled immigrant workers to Canada. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Okay. All set? All right. Is this on? Yeah. Okay, great. So to get us started, folks, I'm going to have a question for all of you here today. As we look at our region's talent pipeline, what do you consider to be the most significant challenges or opportunities related to strengthening our talent pipeline? That's for you. Chris, why don't you start? You're right at the end there.
Sure. So I get started at the far end of the table. I think U of T has got a long history, 150 years coming up actually in 2023. And our talent pipeline is strong. And one of the strongest things we have is in the experiential learning opportunity. We have along with Waterloo, we have a very strong co-op program in our professional experience year program, a full 12 to 16-month opportunity for our students to work directly as undergraduates between third and fourth year with employers. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity, get into the company, learn about those opportunities and moving forward. But I think even more impressively is the opportunity now to extend this to graduate students and provide that opportunity for short work terms, even at a graduate student moving forward. So you get that sort of experiential learning across the sphere for our students. And I think that to us is a strategic opportunity. I think one of the challenges we love to do is diversify the industries that our students can go into. You think classically where engineers go, but our students have a massive opportunity in our program to take minors and certificates across a broad swath of programs. And this really allows our students to go into different fields, whether it's policy, entrepreneurship, even out of the classic STEM fields. And that's kind of one of the things that we're very keen to look at placing our students into those opportunities.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Leslie?
Thanks so much, and thanks for the opportunity. I really look forward to this conversation. At Civic Action, we actually sit in the space between the sectors, public, private, and not-for-profit. And in the end, the talent pipeline ultimately is so that everyone in the region can thrive, that they're able to have access to employment, wellness, parks, open space, the whole gamut. And jobs are a core, and work is core to that. So it's great that the conversation that we just left talked so much about collaboration, because it comes in many, many forms. For us, I'll just give examples of three dimensions, and they represent addressing challenges that I think we see in terms of creating a more robust talent pipeline. At Civic Action, we have a thing called a Champs Council, where we have historically brought together different sectors, different industries, to solution and find actions that no one industry or sector can do on their own. And it has resulted in many, sometimes not big, but sort of small actions. And I'll talk later about our little program called Hire Next, which was a partnership with Accenture. So that's one area where industry is sort of like what's happening here today. The second is collaboration that happens that's on a much smaller scale, that results in mentorship, sponsorship, and networking, because it is through that individuals gain broader access to the network. And the stats, for those of you, we did a report last year with BCG around specifically on anti-Black racism, but it points to the fact that something close to 80% of vacancies were filled by individuals who had some form of connection to a network or access. So let's not discount the importance of that in creating the talent pipeline that any employer wants to access. And then finally, I would say the third area of collaboration that needs to happen is at the decision-making tables, at the board tables, at municipal agencies, boards and commissions. The leadership that is nurtured into those spaces can actually have an important role in setting the stage for your ability through an organization, no matter what sector, to reach out and make it okay to reach out in so many different areas in terms of understanding what is the quote unquote right talent that I'm looking for. And I think we have traditionally prescribed that in ways that are maybe not that beneficial to where we need to go. And that's simple things like job descriptions. So I'll leave it there, Sudan.
You know, it's interesting something you just said there about the right talent, because we heard a little bit today about the soft skills, and I like to call them strong skills. Those are really hard to get. Technical skills, I believe we can teach over time. Strong skills, EQ, not so easy to teach. So, I mean, I love your point there, and Akusoa, maybe you can bring us along.
Yeah, I'm just making sure this, oh, perfect, it works. So I come from a very different perspective. I represent employment service providers, community service agencies in the space, and a lot of what we did at First Work is try to understand who is our untapped labor market, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So, little plug for First Work. We did a little report on the diverse experiences but common challenges that these job seekers face. And there are three main groups for us that we saw. And that was the youth not in employment, education, or training, so the NEET youth. Those that were long-term unemployed, so over 6 months in the unemployment market. And the last one is recently laid off dislocated workers. And what they all had in common, which was quite a few really, is, and I think we've heard this reiterated time and time again throughout today, was the lack of that social network, the lack of networking opportunities. They had experiences, with their previous jobs that don't translate to what employers require. What they had been talking about for a lot of the time is limited experience, limited Canadian experience. And I would love to broach that subject. I think you are going to later on today. But and among all of that, because we often deal with those furthest away, it's, to Leslie's point, those wraparound supports, right? They've been facing, especially through the pandemic, heightened mental health and social health impacts, right? The idea that we're here together is refreshing, is lovely, is welcome, but this hasn't been seen, especially for our youth. This is something they need to experience. This is something they need to learn. Social anxiety is a real thing, and getting out there is very much a part of your career growth. So that's been a challenge in the sector. And then getting employers to recognize that these individuals are critical to their labor market and critical, if only they invest a little bit more, is an opportunity. That's an untapped talent pipeline. Where the opportunity comes is we have community service agencies, we have employment service providers that are underutilized. A lot of SMEs tell us that they have HR capacity issues. They're small. We're an agency, an arm's length agency of the government. The government, publicly funded, utilize these resources, right? So this is, I'm giving it a little bit of the ending, but that's some of the opportunities that we have right now.
That's fantastic. Jack?
As an immigration lawyer in Canada, I love my job. because Canada is by mostly a very immigrant-friendly country. Our environment is one that is quite welcoming, and when it comes to even geopolitical events, like the way that we set up programs for Afghan refugees or for the Ukrainian crisis right now, Canada is flexible and welcoming. Our major political parties are pretty much pro-immigration, and we are famous for that. Amazon, when they were looking for an HQ2, one of the reasons Toronto was shortlisted was our immigration policy and our openness to it as well. So it's great. I mean, I think we heard 2015 to 2020, tech jobs boomed in Toronto. Well, coincidentally, during that time period, two things happened. One is that the number of work permits that were applied for, the number one source country under a global skills strategy was the United States. And not Americans, but foreign nationals in the United States. And the second thing was Donald Trump. And so we were a beneficiary of that because our immigration programs were generous in that regard. So to flip that, two things that could be better. One is the fact that our programs are generous and good, but we're not on a treadmill. We're competing with countries all over the world for global talent. And a lot of the programs that we have were created in 2015 and 2016. So when we created these programs, this was perfect timing. Donald Trump came in and we were beneficiary of that. But we can't rest on those laurels. And because of that, we need to innovate. We need to look at what other countries are doing and be able to think about this. And this dovetails to the point about collaboration, is that immigration is usually the last thing that people think about when organizations are moving people over. Like they come to me and say, "Oh yeah, we have this person coming over. What's it gonna take?" And so maybe it takes 6 to 9 months for them to come. So when are you gonna hire them? It's like, oh, they're already hired. And oh, they've already sold their house. And oh, their kids, they have to go to school. Like, oh, you should have come to me before all this happened. And so when you're talking and thinking about these things, we're in an ecosystem, and one thing relates to another. So this is a plug for all people related to immigration. Let's think about that a little bit more.
Absolutely, and I'm a benefit of that immigration. My dad came in '62, and proud to be a first-generation Canadian, raised my family here because of that. So let's turn now specifically to young people, and I'm going to redirect this question to you, Leslie, Akusoa, and Chris, if you don't mind. Ensuring that the young people have the skills that we're looking for and that they're job ready, and helping employers to understand how to recruit and how to retain them. What are some key considerations for our region's post-secondary institutions, employers, and community service providers?
Thanks for the question. I'll kick us off. Well, first to say, when someone uses the term young people, I'm talking about folks in their teens and in their 20s, maybe their early 30s, just to be clear. One thing I would say, we always ask the question, how do I attract young talent? And I think it's really important to understand what is important to young talent. And the trends have shifted considerably in the last decade, and compensation is important, but the young people are coming to work with a different value ethic around what they want to get out of the hours that they will spend under anyone's employ. And I think as a result, how they view what the job opportunity is filtered by that understanding. And whether it has to do with what it is you're offering from a wellness standpoint, what career trajectories are evident from taking the role, who am I working with, what is the culture of the place, does it value me beyond just my technical skills, can I bring my full self to the table? And I'll give you a very practical example of an initiative I mentioned it earlier, Hire Next. So this is a job posting assessment. Everybody posts jobs, but it takes the words that is in a job description and it screens it through an AI-assisted tool and has certain recommendations about how you could modify things. There was one organization that took they were posting a job, they put it through, they changed the job posting, it doubled the number of applicants. There were two things they changed: the title from the word financial analyst to financial organizer. And the other thing they did is they actually removed the post-secondary education requirement. So, but they did talk about experience and skills that you would bring to the table. Coincidentally, the top 3 candidates for that job came from that second round of the job posting. So it is very, very clear in a very practical level that the solutions to our talent pipeline are not only in the big policy things that we do, but they're in the very practical things we do as we change our own mindset about what talent should look like.
That's great. Thank you, Akosua.
Yeah, I love that because I'm gonna
Steal it? Fine, it's
yeah,
yours.
completely.
Just give me a little credit.
Well, to Leslie's point, yeah, it's all about the value right now, right? Compensation is just one of the options. Teamwork is the other, like who you're working with. Growth. So the big piece that we've seen is professional development. Is there? My team's getting their PD here today, but essentially it's learning, right? And like, do they have that opportunity to grow? Do they have that ability to be empowered? And they're looking at multiple skill sets. They don't want to be in one specific career. It's no longer that one step. I think we all know this, and they don't want to bucket it, right? So what are the options available to them? There was a study done through CERIC in partnership with Environics where they surveyed 500 employers in the space, and they asked you, how important is PD? And 73% said it's very important. Professional development organizations should be doing it. Employers should have a stake in it. But only 27% actually do it, right? And so part of that retention is, do they have that opportunity to grow?
Absolutely. Best PD credits you guys are getting today, huh? Jack, go ahead.
Oh, Chris, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
Apologies.
Sorry about that.
Let me follow up on that a little bit. I think one of the things that we're seeing, and you talk a little bit about how things have changed. I reflect back on when I was an undergraduate. Professional experience here existed, but maybe 10% of our students did it. And what we're seeing now is we're closer. I'm going to pitch it up a little bit on Roger. Right now, I think you're saying about 80% of our third years are doing about 92, he's going like this, about 92% of our first years are now registered to do professional experience here. Actually, we're almost like a true co-op like Waterloo is now. Not quite. We're getting a little bit of a battle between the corridor. But I think what we're seeing right now is that our students, especially in engineering, they don't want to be pitched into silos. They want to get such a broad-based education. They want to get opportunities to work in multidisciplinary teams. They're looking for opportunities in the workplace which mirror that opportunity. Collaborative education, diversity outside of the STEM fields. I mentioned earlier that we've got about 22 minors and certificates. You'd figure they're all in tech. The reality is we, for many who may not know, we actually have a minor in music performance for our students. We have actually, if you follow him on Instagram, I'm looking at colleagues, you'll see I took a video of our school stage band this past weekend, which is just incredible, the kind of talent that we see in our engineering students. But the point is really that our students have a diversity of interests. We've opened up a new minor certificate in public health for our students because of the pandemic. We're seeing interest in that. And I think for our students also, to the point about 18 to 29-year-olds, is that we're interested in the lifelong learning. Merrick hinted this a little bit earlier, the continuing education, the ability to upskill and retrain our undergraduates who even left 2 or 3 years ago, realizing they need new skills to continue to grow those skills. And we just got good word from the province that I think we've got 3 new micro-credentials officially launched at U of T, including one in biomanufacturing. So it's an opportunity for to continue to redevelop our skills for our students as they graduate, and even for those coming into the workforce here. So I think it's about creating those interesting, diverse opportunities for students, the ability to do international opportunities for our students. 20% of our students do international opportunity. When I started as dean, I made a pledge, which the pandemic ruined, that 100% of undergraduates would have an international experience before they graduated. I'm still working on that. But I think this is part of giving our students the opportunity to see what works for them and to find companies and opportunities that line up well with what they're interested in doing and how they can grow within the company.
It's so great, Chris, what you're talking about, because stepping outside of your comfort zone to learn something outside of your domain, it creates such a different experience and life learning skill set. Rola talked about that earlier, about getting uncomfortable to learn something new. That's fantastic. So thank you so much. And I'm going to direct this next question to you, Jack. Sorry, glasses, not so young over here. So another segment of our talent pipeline is immigrants. From an employer perspective, what are the best ways to ensure we're attracting immigrants with the right skill sets, and how we can leverage the skills of the people that are already here? We've heard a lot about that already this morning. Would love to hear your viewpoint.
Yeah, I think that it's important to start off with a couple of, I guess, first principles. One is immigrants mean people who are coming here permanently, so they get their little cards and they have a maple leaf on it. In some communities, they actually call it the maple leaf card because that's what it looks like. But they're also temporary residents, so the international students that come to universities, temporary foreign workers. I know a few years ago that was a bad word, but most temporary foreign workers are the pool that we convert people into permanent residents now. So they've already been here for a certain period of time. They like Canada, and they choose to stay here. The second thing that we should think about is that what we want from an immigration program that our government is running. Because the federal government, and to a lesser degree the provincial governments, are gatekeepers to immigration. So we are slaves to policy and legislation. And in that particular case, some of the first principles we want is that we want an immigration program that is transparent, that is efficient, and is predictable. You remove one of these things and things start to go haywire. So for employers, what should they be looking at? Well, first of all, they should know what the existing system is. Because the Canadian government has very generous immigration programs. And if you fit in one of these generous immigration programs, you'll mostly have a good experience. But if you don't, and there are catch-all categories and things like that as well, then your experience is going to be poop. It's not a great experience. It could take a year right now to just get a work permit, to get a work permit to come to Canada if you're coming from certain countries. And so as an employer, you want to know what your employee's experience is going to be, because if you want to attract people to come to Canada, then you want to give them that experience. The employee experience, especially through the pandemic, has become a paramount factor in attraction. And because our programs are generous, a lot of companies, especially in the tech field, for instance, are packaging permanent residence applications inside their employment contracts, saying if we hire you in the United States, we will apply for permanent residence in Canada for you as part of your package on top of the $150,000 we're going to pay you as a software engineer. So it's a very important factor. And the second part of this is to engage government on all levels when you can as an employer. And you might think, oh, what good is it if I gripe or if I say good things about the government as well? Well, there are a couple of examples I'm going to give you. The first is when on March 20th, I think that's the date, or 18th, when the pandemic hit, our federal government was going to say, nobody gets into Canada, no one. And businesses started to wonder, whoa, wait a minute. How about my workers in agriculture, in engineering, in construction, in finance, in sales? Well, you name it. And so due to this feedback, the government clawed that back. And I think Minister McNaughton was talking about the engagement that he had with the construction industry on what should be permissible. All throughout the pandemic, essential workers have been able to come into Canada and do the essential things that our country needs. The second part of this is a lot more minute. I just told you it could take a year for a work permit to get approved. Well, businesses are crying bloody murder about that. Why is it taking a year for me to get someone here temporarily? And so that message has gone all the way up to Prime Minister Trudeau. And in his mandate letter to Minister Fraser, the immigration minister, he said, fix these processing times. So normally the Prime Minister doesn't get that involved in the minutiae of how a ministry is run, but it became so important because of feedback from employers that it trickled down to the minister. So if you have something, I can't. A lot of times I ask businesses, do your government relations folks, do they talk to immigration? It's like, no, not really. And so I think we're in an era where immigration has become so important that your government relations folks should start thinking about these things as well as part of the things that they talk to government about.
Thanks, Jack. I wanted to go back to a question, a point that you made, Akosua, a little earlier, now that we're on the topic of immigrants again, and you raised something earlier about the bias. We've heard a lot this afternoon about unconscious bias. Employers want to hire people or hiring managers that look like me, sound like me, went to the same alma mater as me. To me, that's more bias than unconscious bias, and I'd like to hear a little bit about how your organization is facing that, so employers know how to tap into that market that is so readily available and ready and willing to work.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is it's not just right skills. Sometimes I often hear the right, like, immigrant, right? So, like, who is that individual? And it's trying to wipe away that conscious, like, that unconscious or conscious bias, right? And really saying, is this individual meeting your skill set? Do they have the experience, whether it's not Canadian experience, but they have vast amount of industry experience in, you know, in the other country that they're coming from, right? And so, like, where are we creating unnecessary barriers? A huge precedent that the pandemic set was when there was a nursing shortage. We saw how fast government could move through the processes and how easily those who could never get those nursing jobs while they were in the height of the pandemic were suddenly open to, you know, we need more nurses, we need more nurses now. They were able to get those jobs, but what happens to the next set of immigrants that come through if we don't meet Canada's need at the moment? Do they still have to go through all those hurdles, or can you make life a little easier? Yes, you should do the checks and balances, but to Jack's point, how quickly can you speed that up?
And the same goes for women who take a break in their career and want to come back to work, right? I mean, being home with children, there's a lot of skills you learn doing that. So that's another market that should be tapped back into as we're looking at shortages in our workforce. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And Chris and Jack, this is for the both of you. So building on what we just heard about immigrants, let's turn our focus to international students now. What's working and what's not working? And you touched a little bit about that already, Jack. But with ensuring our international students find success through school and then stay here and work afterwards.
You want to cover?
Yeah, I'll start. So first off, I think international students are amazing. They really contribute to the diversity of our student body. We've got about 30% or 35% of our incoming class are international students in engineering, drawn from about 50 different countries, and really build that culture for us. For international students, all of our opportunities are available to them. And in fact, at some level, it's great because it gives them access to international professional experience or opportunities and co-ops. And it also helps build for our students the opportunity to work in interdisciplinary, but also multicultural teams, because they are working together, they're learning from each other, and this will also be part of when they come to actually work out in the real world, in a sense, when they leave school. I think the other part for international students, and again, back to this sort of not just our undergrads, but also focus on international students who are coming in as graduate students, professionally trained already, coming back, and the opportunity to participate in our professional programs, our micro-credential programs, opportunities to upskill and reskill once they're in country or in Canada, I think is a huge opportunity for the talent that is needed in the industry now, because a lot of companies we're seeing that are coming to Canada to set up, they're not looking for the undergrad, they're not looking for the fourth-year bachelor, they're actually looking for someone mid-career, right? And they're like, well, where are your mid-career folks? And it's like, well, they're out already, but we've got this huge pool that are available and would be perfect for these jobs. And so we actually have a number of certificate programs through a number of our institutes around leadership training, which help to enhance the sort of non-technical skills, your strong skills, we'll call them power skills, that we can introduce to our overall student body, in fact. And so these are things that we're working on for our international students and growing those opportunities for them.
It's awesome. Jack, before you, Leslie wants to jump in for a moment.
No problem. Go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, I'm so glad you think that international students are so fabulous, because I'm an international student. I came here as an international student, but the point I wanted to make is the benefit for international students who come in undergrad is they graduate with a built-in network. And anyone who's coming mid-career, and we spend a lot of time with incredibly talented rising leaders who enter the city region in the job market mid-career, and their access to that network is it's difficult for them to find peers, colleagues, and so I think that there's a nuanced difference between those that come straight into university and are going all the way through, and those who come in graduate or postgraduate, and I think that's a gap right now of energy that needs to be expended for those, I'll call them mid-career international students.
That's great. Jack?
I mean, from our perspective, there's a tale of two cities. You have these excellent programs for international students that Waterloo and the University of Toronto have built. There's school engagement, there's employer engagement. They're taken care of along their journey, their immigration journey and settlement into Canada. And then you have the flip side, where the education is not the primary purpose of coming to Canada. It's immigration that is the primary purpose. Yep. And these schools some other schools, remain unnamed, are using international students as a pipeline to get students in to raise their enrollment levels, and the students are using the schools to immigrate to Canada. It's not about upskilling or education. And that's where you see articles, I mean, in the Walrus and in media right now about international students who are left out in the cold. And so, there's a bit of that we have to think about in that purpose. I mean, international students, it's a little difficult for them to immigrate permanently right now, and so I think there has to be a bit of focus, at least in the next couple of years, due to some of the things that the federal government has done, but an important part of our ecosystem, regardless.
Thank you. I'll go to our final question as the timer's going down here, and that's for all of you. Let's turn now on how we all work together. We talked about this being an ecosystem, and it's going to take all of us to ensure that we're moving this forward. What are the gaps right now in how different players in the talent ecosystem, post-secondary, employers, government work together, and how do we move this needle?
You're going to start this end again first. Though I think
working it way this way.
Yeah, we're going to go this way. So actually, to use that analogy of a full circle, I think from the university's perspective, one of the key challenges and the key opportunities for us is actually having the realization that we all do work together in a full continuum, right? The university is not really just there just to put out a bunch of undergraduates, right? It's putting out undergraduates, it's postgraduate, it's continuing education. It's the opportunity for upskilling and reskilling. It's the opportunity for research partnerships. It's the opportunity for startups and business. It's really a holistic loop, for a giant, for engineering term, giant feedback loop of the talent pipeline going out, bringing in research partnerships which grow the next talent pipeline, which allows for expansion, economic growth, and so on. And so for us, this is what's really important, is the diversity of ways that individuals, companies, government can all work with the university to build partnerships, whether they're not-for-profit partnerships. I actually have a great idea. We need to talk afterwards. And to do that, right, to build and grow what's important for Ontario.
Maybe for me, I think one of the gaps that we've sort of alluded to but not covered is recognizing across sectors, across industries, that talent has a great deal of intersectionality. So while we're thinking about how do I hire more women, figuring out how to or where to go, what member organization, what industry, what sector, it requires this kind of multifaceted approach to the gap. And we all, I think after today and everything, we know that there is no silver bullet to address what we're talking about. But if we take this kind of multi lens at the problem, we will find that there are many scales of solutions, which when we put them together, will kind of move the bar. And I think collaboration goes without saying. It is about this. It's about reaching out to unlikely partners on solutions. So I think those are some of the key areas that I think we need to, not that we're not doing, we need to do more. Whatever we're doing now, we need to do more.
And speaking of unlikely partners, employment service providers. So the one thing I'd say, like the wraparound supports we talk about for immigrants, like language services, just understanding the landscape, building that social network. These are what the community partners do because they're so embedded in just access, right, and referral processes to housing, just life supports, like life stabilization supports. We need to work more cohesively together. And then when we talk about career development, we talk about talent pipelines, it doesn't just start from university on, right? Like we need to tap into those schools because often our NEET youth, they get lost between high school and university or high school and the workplace. So how do we tap into those markets and how do we provide them the career exploration? The government is doing a good job with respect to the trades, but there are other facets of careers and employment opportunities out there that me as a first immigrant as well weren't aware of, right? And having that knowledge just gives me a breadth of experience going into like exploring what I want to be when I grow up.
That's great. Jack?
All right. Let me tell you an example of why we need to talk together. This talent pipeline thing, their intersectionality is quite evident. And one of the things that strike me is that you talk to any real estate broker in Toronto and you ask them, oh, is there a bubble? Like, is my house going to be worthless tomorrow? And they say, no. Oh, yeah, we're getting immigrants every day. So it's never gonna go away. And I'm thinking, oh wait, there's 100,000 immigrants that come to Canada, Toronto specifically every year, one of the fastest growing cities in the world right now. And of those 100,000, about 60% are economic immigrants. They're coming with high skills and probably a little bit of money. And so of course they want to buy houses, they want to buy condos. And so that's just an example of how we have to think about, oh wait, if we bring in more immigrants, is the housing market going to go into an area where it could create immigration backlash because people are blaming immigrants for housing prices? So I think it's a perfect example of why we need to start thinking holistically about talent pipeline. There's a myriad of other issues apart from housing prices that we need to think about. So yes, let's start talking.
You know, I think the theme of this afternoon in this panel is working together, and the collaboration that's needed between all of our institutions ensure that we're advancing this strategy for all. So if I can steal from John's this morning, he had the 3 letters to think about. Mine are going to be WTF, which is working together for future. So thank you very much, you guys. Enjoyed you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Sudha, for bringing those insights today. It's clear that you have a deep reservoir of knowledge about what needs to be done to strengthen our talent pipeline. Christopher, Leslie, Acostawa, and Jack, we're very, very grateful that you could be with us here today and provide a real flavor, I think, of the situation on the front lines and how immigration can be a much more effective part of the talent pipeline. Thank you for sharing your insights and practical solutions with us today and for your thoughtful analysis of how the Toronto region can work to maintain and hopefully supercharge a healthy flow of relevant, highly skilled workers. Before we move on to our next session, let's pull up the audience poll that I mentioned just before this session. What is the biggest challenge associated with the talent pipeline? And there we have it, a little bit more mixed than earlier ones. But finding people with the right skill set, obviously, there leads the way and very germane to the conversation we've just had.